The Princess and the Enchanted Forest. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a beautiful princess named Isabella. She had long golden hair that shone in the sun, big blue eyes that sparkled with joy, and a heart that was as pure as crystal. Isabella always loved to explore the kingdom and help those in need. One day, she stumbled upon an enchanted forest that she had never seen before. She felt intrigued and decided to venture deeper into it. As she walked, she saw glittering streams, vibrant flowers, and trees that were more magnificent than any she had seen before. She felt like she was in a magical world. Suddenly, she heard someone crying. She followed the sound and found a little fairy who was trapped in a spider's web. Isabella immediately freed her from the web and asked what was wrong. The fairy explained that the wicked witch had cursed the forest, and now everything was in chaos. The animals were scared, the plants were dying, and the water was polluted. Isabella knew she had to do something to help. She decided to seek out the witch and plead with her to lift the curse. But the witch was not easy to find. Isabella wandered for days until she stumbled upon the witch's castle, which was guarded by a ferocious dragon. Isabella knew she couldn't defeat the dragon on her own. So she enlisted the help of a brave knight named George. Together, they fought the dragon and eventually reached the witch's castle. The witch tried to stop them, but Isabella bravely stood up to her and begged her to lift the curse. At first, the witch refused. But then she saw the kindness in Isabella's heart and changed her mind. She lifted the curse, and the enchanted forest became even more beautiful than before. The animals came out to play, the plants bloomed, and the streams sparkled like diamonds. Isabella returned to her kingdom victorious, with George by her side. The people of the kingdom celebrated her bravery and kindness, and Isabella became known as the hero of the enchanted forest. From that day on, Isabella would often return to the enchanted forest, where she would play with the animals and enjoy the beauty of nature. And every time she visited, she would remember the adventure that had changed her life forever. The Enchanted Kingdom. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was an enchanted kingdom full of wonder and magic. The people who lived there were kind-hearted and lived in harmony with nature. The kingdom was ruled by a good and wise queen named Isadora. Isadora had a daughter named Lillian, who was the most beautiful princess in all the land. Lillian loved animals and flowers and spent her days exploring the forest and playing with the creatures that lived there. One day, while Lillian was playing in the woods, she stumbled upon a hidden path that led her deep into the forest. As she walked along the trail, she came across a clearing filled with colorful flowers and a sparkling pond. As Lillian gazed at the pond, she saw a magical creature emerge from the water. It was a fairy, with shimmering wings and a dress made of petals. The fairy introduced herself as Fae and explained that this was her home. Fae showed Lillian around her enchanted kingdom, where everything was alive and magical. The trees sang, the rocks danced, and the flowers glowed in the dark. Fae invited Lillian to stay with her and explore the kingdom together. Lillian spent many happy days in the enchanted kingdom, learning the secrets of the forest and making new friends with the creatures that lived there. But eventually, it was time for her to return to the castle. When Lillian returned to the castle, she told her mother about her adventures in the enchanted kingdom and how wonderful it was. Isadora listened intently and was fascinated by her daughter's story. She decided to visit the enchanted kingdom herself. Isadora was amazed when she arrived in the enchanted kingdom. She had never seen anything like it before. Fae welcomed her warmly and showed her around, revealing even more secrets and magic that Lillian had not yet discovered. From that day on, the queen and her daughter often visited the enchanted kingdom together. They would spend their days exploring the forest, playing with the magical creatures, and learning from Fae. As time passed, more and more people from the kingdom came to visit the enchanted kingdom. They were amazed by its beauty and magic, and word of the place spread far and wide. And so, the enchanted kingdom became a symbol of wonder and hope for all who visited it. Its magic and beauty inspired generations to come. And Faye, the fairy who had welcomed Lillian so warmly, remained. The Enchanted Forest. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there lived a kind and just king who ruled over his subjects with fairness and love. The kingdom was a peaceful place, surrounded by beautiful lush green forests. However, there was one forest that was different from all the others. It was known as the Enchanted Forest. The Enchanted Forest was a mysterious place where strange things happened. It was said that the forest was home to magical creatures and that they would come out at night to play. Some of these creatures were friendly while others could be dangerous. The people of the kingdom had learned to stay away from the Enchanted Forest and warned their children never to venture into it. But there was one little girl named Lily who was curious about the forest. She had heard many stories about it, and her imagination ran wild with the possibilities. One day, she decided to sneak into the forest to see for herself what it was really like. As she walked deeper into the forest, she heard strange noises and saw shadows moving in the trees. She felt scared but kept walking until she came across a small clearing. There, she saw a beautiful fairy with wings as delicate as a butterfly's. The fairy smiled at her and introduced herself as Sophia. Sophia told Lily that she was one of the guardians of the Enchanted Forest and that she was there to protect all the magical creatures who lived there. She also told Lily that the forest was a special place where magic was real and that if she believed in it, she could experience it too. Over the next few days, Sophia and Lily became good friends, and Sophia taught Lily the ways of magic. She showed Lily how to talk to the animals, how to make the flowers bloom brighter, and how to make the trees dance. Lily was amazed by all the wonders she had experienced and was grateful to have made such a wonderful friend. However, one day, the evil witch who lived in a far-off land heard about the Enchanted Forest and decided to come and destroy it. She was jealous of the happiness that the magical creatures had and wanted to take it away from them. The animals in the forest were frightened and didn't know what to do. Lily knew that she had to help her friends. She remembered what Sophia had taught her about magic and used it to create a spell that would protect the forest. Together with Sophia and all the other magical creatures, Lily. The Magic Forest. In a beautiful kingdom, there once lived a young princess named Adeline. She had long flowing hair as dark as the night sky and big, bright eyes that sparkled like diamonds. Adeline loved to explore the kingdom she ruled over and often went on adventures with her parents, the king and queen. One day, while wandering deep into the forest, Adeline stumbled upon a hidden trail that led her to a magical clearing. The grass was emerald green and the trees were taller than any she had ever seen before. As she walked further into the clearing, she noticed a tiny door at the base of a tree. Curious, she knelt down and opened it, only to discover a tiny fairy inside. The fairy introduced herself as Faye, the protector of the magic forest. She explained to Adeline that the forest was home to many enchanted creatures and warned her never to speak of its existence to anyone outside. Faye also gifted Adeline with a magic key that would allow her to enter the forest and explore whenever she pleased. Over the years, Adeline grew older and eventually became queen. Despite her new responsibilities, she still found time to visit the magic forest and all of its wondrous inhabitants. She met talking animals, mischievous fairies, and even mermaids in the nearby river. As time passed, rumors about a secret forest spread throughout the kingdom. Greedy treasure hunters and poachers began to infiltrate the woods, causing destruction and chaos. Adeline knew she needed to act fast to protect the magical place she held so dear. She called upon her bravest knights, and together they formed a plan to keep the forest safe. They created a secret entrance that only those with pure intentions could pass through. They also enlisted the help of the forest's inhabitants to patrol and protect their home. Thanks to their efforts, the magic forest remained a secret oasis of wonder and beauty for generations to come. And Queen Adeline was remembered not only for her wise leadership, but also for her dedication to preserving the enchantment of the world around her. The Singing Mermaid's Quest. In a far-off kingdom, beneath the deep blue sea, lived a magnificent mermaid named Melody. Her voice was so enchanting that it could soothe even the fiercest of storms and charm the deadliest of creatures. But despite her magical talent, Melody yearned to explore the world above the waves. One day, while swimming near the surface, she overheard some sailors talking about a wondrous land called the Island of Wonders, where singing was the most treasured art. Determined to discover this place and showcase her own gift, Melody set out on a quest. She swam for days and nights, encountering all sorts of challenges along the way, from dodging schools of nasty piranhas to escaping fierce whirlpools. But with her resilience and creativity, she managed to overcome every obstacle. Finally, she arrived at the Island of Wonders, where she was greeted by a group of majestic birds. They led her to the great hall and introduced her to the king of singers, a wise old elephant named Alfredo. Alfredo listened to Melody's song and was amazed by its beauty. He invited her to perform in the royal concert, where all the best singers in the land gathered to showcase their talents. Melody sang her heart out, filling the hall with a mesmerizing melody that touched everyone's soul. The audience cheered and applauded. And even the toughest critics couldn't help but shed a tear. After the concert, Alfredo declared Melody the winner and awarded her a golden harp, a symbol of excellence in singing. Overwhelmed with joy and gratitude, Melody thanked the king and all the creatures of the Island of Wonders. As she bid farewell to her new friends and set off back to her underwater home, Melody knew that she had fulfilled her greatest dream. And who knows? Maybe one day, she would return to the Island of Wonders, this time with her friends by her side, to share the magic of singing with all the creatures of the sea and the sky. The magic forest and the enchanted creatures. Once upon a time, there was a magic forest that lay beyond the rolling hills, far from the bustling city. This forest was home to many enchanted creatures, unicorns, centaurs, fairies, and talking animals. One bright sunny day, a young girl named Lily decided to venture into the forest for a picnic with her friends. As they laid out their blanket, they heard a rustle in the bushes. Suddenly, a mischievous fairy named Tinkerbell emerged, giggling uncontrollably. Tinkerbell told the children of a wicked sorcerer who planned to destroy the magic forest and all the creatures within it. The children felt that it was their responsibility to protect the forest and its inhabitants from this evil sorcerer. Together, they set out on a quest to find the sorcerer's lair, and along the way, they met many magical creatures who helped them on their journey. The gentle and wise unicorn, Dawn, showed them the way through the dense forest. The kind-hearted centaur, Archer, shared his archery skills with the children. Finally, they arrived at the sorcerer's lair, which was surrounded by a moat filled with crocodiles. The children used all their wits and courage to overcome the obstacles and defeat the sorcerer. Using all the knowledge and magic they had acquired from their new friends, they saved the magic forest and all its creatures, and the sorcerer was never seen again. Lily and her friends continued to visit the magic forest often, bringing back stories of their adventures to share with others. And every time they returned, they found that the enchanted creatures were always happy to see them, and they knew that they would always have allies in this magical world. From that day on, Lily and her friends were known as the protectors of the magic forest, and they pledged to protect it from any harm that may come its way. The Magic Seed. In a faraway kingdom, there lived a kind-hearted king named Alexander who ruled with fairness and love. His kingdom was known for its beautiful gardens and exquisite flowers. People from all over the world came to see the magical flowers that nobody had ever seen before. One day, the king received a very special gift from his long-lost friend, a seed from a rare and enchanted flower. The king was delighted and ordered his gardeners to plant the seed with the utmost care. Weeks passed, but nothing seemed to grow from the seed. The king was saddened and disappointed, but he didn't lose hope. One night, he dreamt of a radiant fairy who had come to help him. She said, "Oh, King, do not fret, for the seed you planted holds a magic yet. For every tear you shed, it will grow and bring forth a flower of beauty beyond measure." The king woke up with renewed hope and started weeping, not out of sadness, but out of pure faith. To his amazement, the next morning, from the ground where the seed was planted, a tiny sprout began to grow. Days turned into weeks, and the sprout turned into a bud as big as the king's hand. Finally, on the 7th day, the bud blossomed into the most magnificent flower the king had ever seen. Its petals were as brilliant as the sun, and its fragrance filled the air with sweetness. The king called it the magic seed and ordered a special place in his garden just for it. Years passed, and the magic seed became the talk of the town. The people would come from miles away just to catch a glimpse of the flower that had grown from Alexander's tears. One day, an evil sorcerer came to the kingdom and cast a spell on the magic seed, making it wither and lose its radiance. The king was devastated, and the people feared that the magic would be lost forever. But, out of nowhere, the fairy from the king's dream appeared and said, "Do not worry, your majesty, for all is not lost. You have been patient and kind, so I will help you find what you seek." With a wave of her wand, she broke the spell and made the magic seed bloom once more. From then on, the magic seed grew bigger and brighter with each passing day, and the kingdom continued to prosper in beauty and happiness. The Enchanted Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there was a beautiful garden known as the Enchanted Garden. It was said to be a magical place where all sorts of plants and animals lived together in harmony. The garden was tended to by a kind-hearted fairy named Lily, who had the power to talk to plants and animals. She spent her days chatting with the birds, admiring the flowers, and making sure all the creatures were happy and healthy. One day, a group of mischievous goblins snuck into the enchanted garden. They were jealous of the happiness and beauty they saw there. They decided to cause chaos and destruction, hoping to ruin the peace of the garden. They pulled out the flowers, trampled on the grass, and upset the animals. Lily was devastated when she saw the mess. She knew she needed to do something to save the garden. She called on the help of her friends, the fairies of the 4 seasons. Together, they worked tirelessly to restore the enchanted garden. They planted new flowers, fixed the broken trees, and brought back the animals. Slowly but surely, the garden returned to its former glory. The goblins saw that their plan had failed, and they left the garden for good. From that day on, Lily and her friends made it their mission to protect the enchanted garden from harm. They built a fence around it, so no more goblins could sneak in. And they continued to tend to the garden, ensuring that it remained a happy and magical place. Children who visited the enchanted garden heard Lily's stories of its magic and beauty. They learned to respect nature and the importance of kindness and cooperation. They too helped to keep the enchanted garden alive and thriving for generations to come. The Magic Woods and the Lost Princess. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a beautiful kingdom named Alendria. It was ruled by a wise king and queen who had a lovely daughter, Princess Isabella. She was kind, compassionate, and loved by everyone in the kingdom. One day, while Princess Isabella was exploring the woods, she stumbled upon a hidden path that led her into a magical forest. When she entered the forest, she noticed that the trees sparkled like diamonds, and the flowers glowed in the moonlight. She thought she had never seen anything more beautiful in her entire life. As she walked deeper into the forest, she heard a soft melody in the distance. She followed the sound and discovered a group of tiny fairies playing musical instruments around a small pond. The fairies welcomed her with open arms and invited her to dance with them. She joined in and danced until she grew tired. As the night grew darker, the fairies warned her not to stray from the path, or she would lose herself in the forest forever. Princess Isabella, feeling invincible, ignored their warning and continued her journey further in the forest. Suddenly, she found herself lost in a maze of twisted trees and tangled vines. She tried to retrace her steps, but everything looked the same in every direction. She realized she had made a grave mistake by ignoring the fairy's warning. Feeling hopeless, she sat down on a log and began to cry. Suddenly, a wise old owl appeared and asked her what was wrong. She explained her situation, and the owl offered to help her find her way out of the woods. The owl led her through the maze until they came to a clearing where they saw a large castle. As they approached the castle, they could see a beautiful princess locked up in a tower. She was crying and begging for help. Princess Isabella realized that the princess was lost too and needed to be rescued. She asked the owl to fly up to the tower and rescue the trapped princess. The owl flew up and found a wicked witch holding the princess captive and guarding her with all her might. The owl tricked the witch, and Princess Isabella was able to free the princess from her tower prison. The princess thanked Princess Isabella for saving her, and together they made their way back to Alendria Kingdom. When they returned, the king and queen were overjoyed to see their daughter. The Enchanted Forest 2. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was an enchanted forest. The forest was home to many magical creatures, and it was said that anyone who entered the forest would never leave. One day, a young girl named Lily wandered into the forest. She had heard stories about its magic and was eager to see it for herself. As she walked deeper into the forest, she heard a beautiful singing voice. She followed the sound and came upon a clearing where a group of fairies were dancing and singing. The fairies welcomed Lily and invited her to join in their dance. As they danced, they told her about the magic that lived within the forest. They explained that the forest was protected by a powerful spell that would prevent anyone from leaving until they learned the secrets of the magic within. Lily was determined to learn the secrets of the forest, and the fairies agreed to help her. They taught her how to communicate with the animals, how to use the plants for healing, and how to make potions. They also warned her about the dangers of the forest, including the evil witch who lived deep within. Lily spent many months in the forest, learning all of its secrets. She became friends with the fairies, and the animals, and even the trees themselves. But she knew she could not stay forever, and she longed to return to her village. One day, as she was saying goodbye to her fairy friends, she heard a cackling laugh. It was the witch. And she had come to capture Lily and take her magic powers for herself. Lily tried to run, but the witch was too powerful. Just as the witch was about to take Lily's magic, the animals of the forest banded together to protect her. The trees grew taller and stronger. The birds swooped down to distract the witch, and the fairies used their magic to trap the witch in a cage. With the witch defeated, Lily was able to leave the forest and return home. But she would never forget the magic and love she had found within the enchanted forest. From that day on, Lily used her newfound knowledge to help her village, healing the sick and protecting the innocent. And every night, she would look up at the stars and remember the fairies and the magic of the enchanted forest. The Enchanted Forest Adventure. In a faraway land, there was an enchanted forest where magical creatures and talking animals lived. One day, two young siblings, Tommy and Emily, were walking through the forest when they stumbled upon a mystical fairy who was crying. "What's wrong?" asked Tommy. The fairy sniffled and said, "I lost my wand. Without it, I cannot do any magic." Tommy and Emily felt sorry for the fairy and decided to help her. They searched high and low, through the thick forest, over hills and across streams. Just when they were about to give up, they spotted a shiny object on top of a tall tree. "We have to climb up there," exclaimed Emily. Tommy was hesitant as he had never climbed a tree before, but with his sister's encouragement, he finally agreed. They climbed higher and higher until they reached the top, where they found the fairy's wand stuck in a bird's nest. As they were about to retrieve the wand, the mother bird returned and started to attack them. Tommy and Emily had to use all their wits and courage to defend themselves. Finally, they defeated the bird and retrieved the fairy's wand. The grateful fairy rewarded the siblings by granting them 3 wishes each. Tommy wished for a guitar, Emily wished for a pony, and for their final wish, they wished to go back home safely. From that day forward, Tommy and Emily became famous in the Enchanted Forest for their bravery and kindness. They often visited the fairy and the magical creatures, bringing joy and laughter wherever they went. And so, the siblings learned that even in a world filled with magic, the greatest power of all is kindness. The Magical Garden of Enchantment. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a magical garden filled with the most enchanting flowers and plants. The garden was so beautiful that people would come from all over the world just to see it. It was a place of peace and tranquility where anyone could forget their worries and be happy. One day, a young girl named Lily stumbled upon the garden while on a walk in the forest. As she approached, she noticed that the flowers were unlike any she had ever seen before. Each one was more vibrant than the last, and their smells were so sweet that they made her head spin. As Lily was admiring the flowers, she noticed a small creature hiding behind a tree. The creature was no bigger than a mouse, but had wings like a fairy. It was a baby fairy. Lost and alone in the forest. Feeling sorry for the little creature, Lily decided to take the fairy under her wing. She took the fairy back to her family's home and began to care for it every day. She gave it food and shelter and even played games with it. One night, as Lily was sleeping, she woke up to find the fairy fluttering around her room. The fairy told her that she needed to take her back to the magical garden and showed her a secret path that led to a hidden door. As they entered the garden, Lily gasped in amazement. The garden was now even more beautiful than before. It was full of light, magic, and wonder. The fairy explained that the garden was only visible to those who had pure hearts and the pure intention of helping others. Lily and the fairy spent many days exploring the garden and meeting new friends. They met talking birds, friendly squirrels, and even a wise old tree who gave them advice on how to live a happy life. But one day, Lily realized that she needed to return home. The fairy assured her that she would always be welcome back in the magical garden and that she would always be welcomed with open arms. As Lily left the garden, she felt changed. She knew that she had experienced something truly magical and that she could never forget it. From that day on, she lived her life with kindness, compassion, and a sense of wonder that she had learned from the magical garden of enchantment. The wondrous journey of little Lily. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there lived a little girl named Lily. She lived with her parents in a small hut on the outskirts of the town. One day, while playing in the forest, she stumbled upon a magical doorway that led to an enchanting world full of wonders and magic. As she wandered around in this new world, she met a talking rabbit who offered to guide her through this mystical land. Together they embarked on a journey filled with adventure and challenges. They climbed mountains, crossed rivers, and battled fierce creatures, all while overcoming their fears. As they traveled deeper into the unknown, they came across a beautiful garden where the flowers glowed in the dark, and the smell was so sweet that it made them dizzy. They met the fairy queen, who granted them a wish. Lily wished for the safety of her family back in her world. The fairy queen granted her wish and sent her back home. Little did she know that the journey had transformed her into a brave and confident young girl. She returned home to find her parents safe and sound, waiting for her return. She shared her tales of adventure with them, and from then on, they looked at the world in a different light. Lily had discovered a new world, but more importantly, she had discovered herself. She learned that true magic lies within oneself, and anyone can achieve anything they set their minds on. From that day on, Lily lived happily with her parents, cherishing the memories of her wondrous journey. And she knew that someday she would go back to that magical land and explore it even further. The Magic Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a magic forest filled with all sorts of creatures. The forest was so vast that it would take many days for anyone to navigate through its thick trees and bushes. In the heart of the forest lived the king of all creatures, a magnificent unicorn named Orion. Orion was known throughout the forest as fair and just, and he always helped those in need. One day, a little girl named Lily wandered into the forest, lost and scared. She was tired, hungry, and had no idea how to get back home. Orion was quick to spot her and immediately knew that she needed his help. "Hello, little one," Orion softly said to Lily. "What brings you into my forest?" Lily explained how she had gotten lost while playing in the nearby meadows and begged Orion to help her find her way back home. Orion obliged and instructed his most trusted animal friends, a wise owl, a friendly fox, and a helpful rabbit, to accompany the little girl on her journey. As they traveled through the forest, the animals taught Lily how to find her way using the sun, the wind, and the stars. They battled through the challenges of the forest, from treacherous ravines to thorny thickets, and even faced a fearsome dragon who guarded the exit of the forest. Lily was frightened, but with the help of Orion's animal friends, she faced her fears and conquered them one by one. Finally, after many long days of traveling, they reached the edge of the forest, and Lily could see her village in the distance. She hugged her new friends, grateful for their help, and promised to visit them in the magic forest whenever she could. From that day on, Lily was never afraid to explore new places, knowing that if she ever got lost again, Orion and his animal friends would be there to help her find her way home. And so, the legend of Orion and his animal friends spread throughout the land, and children far and wide knew that the magic forest was a place of adventure and wonder, where anything was possible if you had the courage to ask for help. The magical adventure of Lily the Fairy. Once upon a time, in a far-off land where the grass was always green and the sun shone bright, lived a little fairy named Lily. She had long, flowing hair and wings as delicate as a butterfly's. Lily loved to explore the woods and fields around her home, but she longed for a grand adventure. One day, while out on a walk, Lily stumbled upon a tiny cottage hidden deep in the woods. Inside, she found an old woman rocking back and forth in her chair. The woman looked up at Lily and smiled warmly. "Hello, dearie," she said, "what brings you to my humble abode?" Lily explained that she was seeking adventure and asked if the old woman knew of any quests or challenges she could undertake. The old woman's smile faded slightly. "I'm afraid I have no such adventure to offer you. But I do have a task that needs doing." She pointed to a set of dishes in the sink. "If you could wash these for me, it would be a great help." Lily was taken aback. This was not the grand adventure she had envisioned, but she didn't want to disappoint the old woman. So, she got to work scrubbing the dishes. As she washed, something magical happened. The dishes began to glow and sparkle, and suddenly, they transformed into a set of golden plates and goblets. The old woman clapped her hands in delight. "Well, I'll be. You truly are a fairy of great magic and wonder." With this newfound knowledge of her powers, Lily returned home feeling full of confidence. She decided that she would seek out more opportunities to use her magic and help those in need. And so, she set off on a grand adventure that would take her across the land and through many challenges. Through her trials and tribulations, Lily never forgot the lessons she learned from the old woman in the woods. She used her magic to help others and was always kind and gentle, even to those who did not deserve it. In the end, Lily returned home a wiser, stronger fairy than before. She knew that true adventure lay not in battles or quests for glory, but in the simple acts of kindness and compassion that we show to others. And so she vowed to continue on her journey, spreading magic and joy wherever she went. The unlikely friends. Once upon a time in a far-off land, there lived a little bird named Pip. Pip was always chirpy and loved to sing, but he was also very lonely as he had no friends. One day, while flying over the forest, Pip heard someone crying. He flew towards the sound and found a little mouse named Molly. She had lost her way and was too scared to find her way back home. Pip felt pity on Molly and decided to help her. Together, they set out to find Molly's home. They walked through the forest and crossed many rivers and hills. On their way, they met different animals who laughed at their strange friendship. The bigger animals thought of them as an odd pair. As the night started to approach, they saw a big cave in front of them. Molly recognized it and exclaimed, "This is my home." "Thank you, Pip." Pip was happy that he was able to help his new friend. But then he realized that he had to return home, and he didn't know the way. Molly understood and offered him to stay with her for the night. Inside the cave, they built a cozy little nest and shared stories and laughter. The next morning, Pip said his goodbyes to Molly and headed back home. The journey back home was tough, but Pip kept thinking about his new friend and all the adventures they had together. When he finally reached his home, he found that he wasn't alone anymore. All the other birds had noticed his kindness and wanted to be friends with him. From that day, Pip's life had changed completely. He had lots of new friends, but he never forgot about his first friend, Molly. Every time he visited her, they would have new adventures and their bond grew stronger. And that is how the unlikeliest friends found each other in the most unexpected way and became inseparable. The end. The Enchanted Forest 3. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there was a beautiful forest called the Enchanted Forest. This forest was different from all other forests because it was home to magical creatures such as unicorns, fairies, and talking animals. One day, a young princess named Isabella wandered into the Enchanted Forest. She had heard many stories about the magical creatures that lived there and wanted to see them for herself. As she walked deeper into the forest, she saw a unicorn grazing in a meadow. The unicorn noticed her and began to walk towards her. As it got closer, the unicorn bowed its head and allowed Isabella to climb onto its back. Together, they traveled through the forest, encountering fairies, birds that could talk, and even a dragon. The dragon was friendly, and Isabella was not afraid. She spoke with the dragon and learned that he guarded a treasure hidden deep within the forest. Isabella asked if she could see it, and the dragon agreed to take her. When they arrived at the treasure, Isabella was amazed. The treasure was a crystal that shone like the stars in the sky. She reached out to touch it, but the dragon warned her not to. He explained that whoever touched the crystal would be granted one wish, but that wish would come with a great cost. Isabella was hesitant, but decided to make a wish anyway. She wished for happiness and peace throughout the kingdom. As soon as she spoke those words, the crystal shattered, and a bright light filled the forest. When the light faded, everything was different. The animals were no longer talking, and the fairies had disappeared. However, Isabella knew that her wish had come true, and she felt a sense of peace in her heart. From that day on, when people entered the Enchanted Forest, they felt a calmness and happiness that they could not explain. Isabella knew that her wish had changed the kingdom forever, and she was proud of herself. She continued to visit the Enchanted Forest and, although the creatures no longer talked to her, she felt their presence and knew that they were still there. And so, the Enchanted Forest became a legend that was passed down from generation to generation. People would come from all over the kingdom just to see the calmness and peace that it brought. And the legend of Isabella and the magical creatures of the Enchanted Forest. The Enchanted Forest 4. In a land far, far away, where the trees stretched up into the sky and the flowers bloomed with vibrant colors that left everyone in awe, there lived a young girl named Lily. Lily had long curly hair and big, curious eyes that would wander to every corner of the forest she called home. One day, while wandering through the woods, she stumbled upon a hidden path she had never seen before. She followed it eagerly until she came across an old, rusty gate. As she peered through the bars, she saw what appeared to be an enchanted garden, filled with magical creatures and shimmering flowers. As she pushed the gate open, she gasped at the sight that unfolded before her. The garden was alive with twinkling lights and playful music that filled the air. There were fairies flitting from flower to flower and little elves darting in and out of bushes. Lily approached timidly, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, a tiny fairy flew up to her and said, "Welcome, dear child, to the enchanted forest. We have been waiting for you." The fairy then led Lily through the garden, pointing out all the wonders that lay hidden within. They met talking animals and mischievous pixies, and even danced with the leaves that fell from the trees. As the day turned to night, Lily knew she had to return home. She thanked the fairy for showing her so much magic and promised to return soon. From that day on, Lily visited the enchanted garden every chance she got. And as she grew older, she shared the secrets of the enchanted forest with others, spreading joy and wonder wherever she went. And so, the enchanted forest became a place of legend, whispered about by children across the land. It remained a secret place, known only to those who believed in the magic of the world around them. The Magic Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there was a magical garden. This garden was filled with all kinds of flowers and plants, and it was said to be where the fairies lived. The garden was guarded by a giant dragon who would breathe fire at anyone who tried to enter without permission. One day, a group of children stumbled upon the magic garden. They were fascinated by the flowers, and they longed to explore the garden's secrets. But as soon as they stepped inside, the dragon appeared, breathing fire and ready to attack. The children were frightened, but then they heard a soft, gentle voice. It was the fairy queen, who had been watching from afar. "Fear not, children," she said. "The dragon is only protecting the garden. If you promise to respect the plants and creatures that live here, he will let you explore." The children agreed, and the dragon lowered his guard. They wandered through the garden, marveling at its beauty and discovering its secrets. They met the fairies, who showed them how to care for the plants and how to use their magic to make them grow. As they explored deeper into the garden, the children came across a dark forest. In the center of the forest stood a castle, surrounded by a moat filled with crocodiles. The castle belonged to an evil sorceress who had been banished from the kingdom many years ago. The children wanted to explore the castle, but they were afraid of the sorceress. The fairy queen appeared again and told them that if they could defeat the sorceress, they would gain her respect and her treasures. The children were brave and decided to take on the challenge. They crossed the moat, fought off the crocodiles, and entered the castle. The sorceress was waiting for them, ready to use her magic to defeat them. But the children were not afraid. They remembered everything they had learned in the magic garden, and they used their newfound skills to outsmart the sorceress. They defeated her in a magical battle and claimed her treasures. As they left the castle, the fairy queen appeared once more. She congratulated the children on their bravery and told them that they would always be welcome in the magic garden. From that day on, the children visited the garden every year, bringing with them all that they had learned. And the dragon always let them in, knowing that they were the magical creatures. In a faraway land, there was an enchanted forest where magical creatures lived peacefully. The forest was full of tall trees that reached the sky and shimmering streams that flowed gracefully. Butterflies with wings as big as a house fluttered their colorful wings, and birds with feathers of different shades chirped sweet melodies. Deep in the heart of the forest lived a kind fairy queen named Ember. She had long golden hair, sparkling green eyes, and a voice as sweet as honey. She ruled over the forest, keeping it safe and protecting it from harm. One day, a young boy named Jack stumbled into the forest. He was lost and scared and didn't know where to turn. The fairy queen saw him and took pity on him. She appeared before him and asked him what he was doing in the forest. Jack explained that he had gotten lost while playing in the woods and couldn't find his way back home. The fairy queen promised to help him find his way home, but first, he had to help her with a task. Ember had lost her magical wand, and she needed it to keep the forest safe from the evil sorcerer who lived in the neighboring kingdom. Jack agreed to help her find it. And they set off on a journey together. They traveled through the forest, crossing streams, and climbing mountains until they finally reached the doorstep of the sorcerer's castle. With the fairy queen's help, Jack managed to sneak into the castle, where he found the wand hidden among the sorcerer's treasures. As soon as Jack picked up the wand, the sorcerer woke up and chased after him. Jack ran as fast as he could, with the sorcerer hot on his heels. Just as the sorcerer was about to catch Jack, the fairy queen appeared and used her magic to defeat the sorcerer. With the sorcerer gone, Jack and the fairy queen made their way back to the forest. Ember gave Jack a warm hug and thanked him for his help. She then used her magic to send him back home, where he was reunited with his family. From that day on, Jack visited the enchanted forest whenever he could. He and the fairy queen had become the best of friends, and they went on many adventures together. And so, the enchanted forest remained a magical place full of wonder and joy, guarded by the brave fairy queen and her loyal friend, Jack. The Magical Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily who lived in a small village. One day, while wandering in the forest, she stumbled upon a hidden path that led her to a magical forest. It was filled with talking animals, colorful flowers, and sparkling streams. As she explored the forest, she met a wise old owl who offered to guide her through the enchanted land. Together they journeyed through the forest, meeting friendly creatures like rabbits, squirrels, and birds. They even came across a unicorn who allowed Lily to ride on its back. However, their adventure took a dangerous turn when they encountered an evil witch who lived in a dark and creepy corner of the forest. The witch had been stealing the magic from the forest, and everything was starting to wither away. Lily knew that she had to do something to save the magical forest, so with the help of her new animal friends, they set out to defeat the wicked witch. After many trials and tribulations, they finally managed to defeat her and return the magic to the forest. As a reward for her bravery, the magical forest granted Lily a special gift. She was granted the ability to speak to animals and a special connection with nature. From then on, Lily spent most of her days exploring the magical forest, and she always remembered the lessons she learned along the way, to be kind, brave, and always respect nature. And from that day forward, the magical forest never lost its sparkle again. The end. The Magic Garden 2. Once upon a time in a far-off kingdom, there was a beautiful garden that was hidden away in the depths of a dense forest. Many people had heard of the garden, but no one knew where it was located. It was said that the garden was magical and that it was home to rare and exotic plants that held special powers. One day, a young girl named Lily stumbled upon the garden while exploring the forest. As she walked along the winding path, she noticed that all of the flowers were glowing with a brilliant light. Intrigued, she decided to explore further. As she made her way deeper into the garden, she came across a group of fairies who were tending to the flowers. They welcomed her warmly and showed her around, pointing out all of the different plants and their unique properties. Lily was amazed by the beauty of the garden and the kindness of the fairies. She asked if she could stay and help care for the plants, and the fairies gladly accepted her offer. For many months, Lily worked tirelessly alongside the fairies to tend to the garden. As she worked, she learned more and more about the magic that flowed through the plants. She discovered that some could heal the sick, while others could bring joy and happiness to those who were feeling down. One day, the kingdom was struck by a terrible plague. People were falling ill left and right, and no one knew how to stop it. But Lily remembered the healing powers of the plants in the magic garden. She gathered as many as she could carry and brought them back to the kingdom. With the help of the fairies, Lily used the plants to create a powerful potion that cured the sick and stopped the spread of the plague. The people of the kingdom were overjoyed and grateful to Lily and the fairies for their help. From that day forward, the magic garden became known throughout the kingdom as a place of wonder and healing. And Lily remained at the garden, continuing to learn the secrets of the plants and spreading their magic wherever she went. The Starlight Princess. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a beautiful princess named Lyra. She lived in a kingdom where the sky was always dark, and the stars shone brighter than anything else. Lyra was so enchanted by the stars that she would spend hours looking up at the night sky. One day, while out on a walk, Lyra stumbled upon a shooting star that had fallen to the ground. She picked it up and held it close to her chest, feeling its warmth and energy surging through her body. Suddenly, the shooting star transformed into a magical fairy, who introduced herself as Stella. Stella told Lyra that she was the Starlight Princess, chosen by the stars to bring light and hope to the Dark Kingdom. Lyra was shocked, but also excited to take on such a responsibility. Stella gave her a magic wand that could conjure up the most beautiful and powerful starlight that anyone had ever seen. As Lyra began her journey to spread light and happiness throughout the kingdom, she encountered many obstacles, including a terrifying dragon that breathed fire and robbed the village of its light. But with her kind heart and powerful starlight, Lyra was able to defeat the dragon and restore light to the village. Lyra became known as the Starlight Princess, and people from all over the kingdom came to see her and experience her magic. She proved that one person can make a difference, and that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. Years later, when Lyra had grown old and passed on her magic wand to a new generation of Starlight Princesses, Stella visited her one last time. She told Lyra that her legacy would live on in the stars, and that every time someone looked up at the night sky, they would be reminded of the brave and selfless Starlight Princess who brought light to their world. And so, Lyra's story became a legend in the kingdom. Parents told their children of the Starlight Princess who brought hope to the darkest of times, and every night they would look up at the sky and make a wish on a shooting star, hoping to be blessed with some of Lyra's magic. The Beautiful Forest. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful forest full of magic and mystery. The trees were taller than any that you have ever seen, and their branches twisted and turned in the most unusual ways. The leaves glistened like diamonds, and the flowers sparkled like rubies. It was a magical place where animals could talk and fairies would visit. In this forest lived a kind-hearted princess named Isabella. She loved to take walks through the enchanted forest and talk with the animals. One day, while walking, she came upon a tiny fairy who was crying. "Dear fairy, what is wrong?" asked Princess Isabella. The fairy replied, "My wand has been stolen by an evil witch who lives in the deepest part of this forest. Without my wand, I cannot cast spells or fly, and I am lost." Princess Isabella was determined to help the fairy find her wand, so they set off on a journey deep into the heart of the forest. They encountered many challenges on their journey, but together they were able to overcome them all. Finally, they arrived at the witch's lair and quietly entered. The witch was busy casting spells, and they were able to sneak up on her undetected. Princess Isabella grabbed the wand and handed it back to the fairy. The grateful fairy granted Princess Isabella 3 wishes. Isabella wished for the animals in the forest to be protected and for the forest to remain enchanted forever. As for her last wish, she wished for the fairy to stay with her always so that she could continue to explore the forest and all its wonders. From that day on, the enchanted forest remained the same, and the animals and fairies lived happily ever after. And every once in a while, you can still see Princess Isabella and her fairy friend exploring the magical forest together. The Princess and the Firefly Forest. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom called the Land of Stars where the king and queen ruled with wisdom and kindness. They had a daughter who was the most beautiful girl in the kingdom, and they named her Celestia. Celestia grew up to be a kind-hearted princess who cared for all the people and creatures in the kingdom. But one day, the kingdom was struck by a curse that turned everything dark and gloomy. The king and queen searched for a solution, but nothing seemed to work. One night, Celestia had a dream where she heard a voice telling her to go to the Firefly Forest and find the fireflies. She woke up and immediately set out on her journey to the forest. As she walked through the dark forest, Celestia heard strange noises and saw scary shadows moving around her. But she kept walking until she reached the heart of the forest. There she found the fireflies. The fireflies were tiny creatures that glowed with bright light. And they had the power to dispel the darkness that had taken over the kingdom. Celestia asked the fireflies for their help, and they agreed to accompany her back to the kingdom. As they journeyed back, Celestia and the fireflies faced many obstacles. They were chased by evil creatures and encountered treacherous paths, but the fireflies used their light to guide them safely back home. Finally, they reached the kingdom where the king and queen were waiting anxiously. Celestia and the fireflies got to work right away, and soon the darkness lifted from the kingdom. The people rejoiced, and Celestia was hailed as a hero. From that day on, the Firefly Forest became a place of pilgrimage for people seeking hope and light in their lives. And Celestia lived happily ever after, knowing that with the help of friends and the courage to face obstacles, she had saved her kingdom. The Magical Forest. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a magical forest that nobody dared enter. The trees were tall and lush, with branches that reached for the sky. The bushes and flowers were bright and colorful, filling the air with sweet fragrances. But a legend had it that the forest was enchanted, and whoever entered it never returned. One day, a young boy named Jack stumbled upon the forest while out on an adventure. Ignoring the warning signs, he decided to explore the forest and find out what lay inside. As he walked deeper, the trees grew thicker and the light began to fade. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound and turned to see a pack of wolves running towards him. Jack ran frantically, but the wolves closed in on him. Just as he felt like all was lost, he stumbled upon a clearing and saw a beautiful fairy sitting on top of a mushroom. She looked at Jack with kindness and asked him why he was in the enchanted forest. Jack told her about his adventure and how he wanted to see what was inside the forest. The fairy smiled and told him that she would help him out. She gave him a magic potion and told him to drink it. The potion would turn him into a bird, and he could fly out of the forest without harm. Jack drank the potion and transformed into a beautiful bluebird. He flew out of the forest, enjoying the freedom of the skies. When he landed, he noticed that he had returned home, safe and sound. For years to come, Jack told the tale of the enchanted forest and the kind-hearted fairy who saved his life. Children from all over the land came to hear the story, and they learned that sometimes even the most dangerous of places can hold secrets that are worth exploring. The Magical Quest of the Enchanted Forest. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was an enchanting forest full of magical creatures. The forest was known for its beauty and was guarded by a wise old owl named Hooty. One day, a young girl named Lily entered the forest. She had heard stories about the forest's magic and beauty and was determined to see it for herself. As she wandered through the forest, she met a friendly fox named Finn who offered to be her guide. With Finn leading the way, Lily saw all kinds of wonders, like talking trees, flying squirrels, and even a unicorn. However, Lily soon learned that not everything in the forest was friendly. She encountered a group of goblins who had taken over a clearing in the forest. The goblins chased Lily and Finn, but they managed to escape and find refuge in a castle deep in the forest. In the castle lived a kind and powerful fairy queen who had the ability to grant wishes. Lily told the queen about the goblins and how they were terrorizing the forest. The queen agreed to help and granted Lily and Finn 3 wishes to defeat the goblins. Lily wished for a sword. Finn wished for a bow and arrows, and the queen gave them a magical shield that could protect them from any harm. Armed with their new weapons, Lily and Finn set off to face the goblins. The battle was long and difficult, but eventually, Lily and Finn emerged victorious. The goblins fled the forest, and peace was restored. To celebrate their victory, the fairy queen threw a grand party for all the creatures in the forest. Lily and Finn danced and celebrated with their new friends, knowing they had made a difference in the world. From that day on, Lily visited the enchanted forest often, staying with her new friends and learning more about the magical world that existed within it. And every time she visited, the forest welcomed her with open arms, knowing that she was a true friend of the creatures who lived within it. The Magical Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a magical garden that was hidden from human eyes. This garden was home to all kinds of fairies, talking animals, and enchanted creatures. The garden was protected by a wicked witch who had put a curse on it, preventing anyone from entering or enjoying its beauty. One day, a group of brave children stumbled across the entrance to the garden. They were curious and determined to explore this mysterious place. As they entered, they saw the wilted flowers and trees, the dried-up streams, and the sad faces of the fairy folk who lived there. The children felt sorry for the beings who called the garden their home. They asked the fairy queen what had happened to the garden. The queen explained the curse that the wicked witch had placed on it, causing the garden to wither and die. The children knew they had to find a way to break the curse and help the garden come back to life. They searched for answers and found a magical spell that was hidden in an old book. The spell required a pure heart, a brave spirit, and a selfless act of kindness. The children knew they were up for the task. They each took turns reciting the spell while holding hands and focusing on the garden. Suddenly, a bright light shone, and the curse was broken. The garden came back to life, and the fairies were filled with joy and gratitude. The children were hailed as heroes, and the fairy queen awarded them with magical powers that would last forever. From that day on, the garden was no longer hidden. It became a place of wonder and beauty, where children could play and learn from the magical creatures that lived there. The end. The Enchanted Forest 5. Once upon a time, there was an enchanted forest that no one dared to enter. Many believed the forest was cursed, for those who had entered never returned. However, deep within the forest lived a group of creatures known as the woodland fairies. They lived happily, tending to the forest and all its inhabitants. One day, a young boy named Jack stumbled upon the forest while playing in the nearby meadow. Curiosity getting the better of him, he entered without hesitation. As he walked deeper into the forest, he heard whispers from the trees and rustling in the bushes. Suddenly, he came face to face with a beautiful fairy named Lily. Lily was surprised to see a human in the forest and asked what brought him there. Jack explained that he was just curious and wanted to explore the enchanted forest. Lily, fond of children, decided to show Jack around the forest, introducing him to all its magical inhabitants. Jack met the talking animals, the mischievous forest imps, and even danced with the butterflies. However, their joy was short-lived when they were confronted by an evil witch named Morgana. Morgana had been banished from the forest years ago for her wicked ways, but she had returned seeking revenge. Morgana cast a spell on Lily, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. She then chased Jack through the forest, hoping to capture him as well. Jack knew he had to save Lily and defeat Morgana. He sought the help of the forest animals, the imps, and the fairies, who all agreed to join his quest. They battled Morgana, using their powers and intelligence to outsmart her. In the end, they defeated her and saved Lily. With Morgana gone, the enchanted forest was free from evil. Lily woke up from her slumber, grateful to Jack and his new friends for their bravery. As a reward, the woodland fairies granted Jack a magical charm, which would protect him from any harm in the future. From that day forward, Jack visited the enchanted forest often, bringing his family and friends to enjoy its beauty, wonder, and magic. And the woodland fairies continued to live happily, grateful to have such a wonderful friend as Jack. The end. The Enchanted Forest 6. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there was a magical forest so mystical and enchanting that no one dared to enter it. It was said that the forest was home to countless magical creatures like unicorns, fairies, and talking animals. One day, a young girl named Lily, who lived in the nearby village, decided to venture into the forest, despite the warning of her parents and elders. As she walked deeper into the forest, she came across a beautiful unicorn grazing in a meadow. The unicorn looked up at her and smiled, and Lily knew that she had stumbled onto something truly magical. As she walked further, Lily came across a group of fairies who were tending to a wounded bird. The fairies were singing sweet songs, and their voices echoed throughout the forest. Lily continued walking until she came upon a clearing where a wise old owl perched on a tree branch. The owl turned to Lily and said, "Welcome, young one. You have entered a sacred realm. Tell me, what brings you here?" Lily explained that she was on a quest to discover the secrets of the enchanted forest. The owl smiled and told her that there was a great treasure hidden deep within the forest, but only a pure-hearted soul could find it. Determined to uncover the treasure, Lily embarked on a journey deeper into the forest, encountering many magical creatures along the way. She helped a group of animals cross a treacherous river and saved a fairy from a spider's web. Finally, she reached the heart of the forest, where she found a small box made of gold. Inside the box was a sparkling jewel, and as she held it in her hand, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace and joy. Lily returned to her village, where she shared her story with all the other children. From that day on, children from all over the kingdom would visit the enchanted forest, hoping to find their own treasures and create their own magical adventures. And so, the enchanted forest became a place of wonder and joy for generations to come. The Enchanted Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a beautiful garden, unlike any other. It was a magical place, full of vibrant flowers and exotic trees that danced to the music of the wind. Overlooking this enchanted garden was a mighty castle, where lived the kind and just king and queen. For as long as anyone could remember, the garden had been under the threat of the wicked witch who lived in the dark forest beyond the castle walls. Every night, she would send her minions to destroy the beauty of the garden with their black magic spells. The king and queen tried everything they could to protect their beloved garden, but to no avail. One day, a little girl named Lily came to visit the castle. She was enamored by the beauty of the garden, and as she played, she noticed that the flowers were whispering to her. They told her about the wicked witch and how she was destroying the garden with her dark magic. Lily knew she had to do something. The next day, when the sun rose, Lily went to the king and queen and told them that she would defeat the witch and save the garden. The king and queen were hesitant at first, but Lily's determination convinced them to let her try. Lily went to the flower fairy, who gifted her with a magical flute. It had the power to call forth the creatures of the forest who could help her defeat the witch. Lily set out on her journey, playing her flute as she walked deeper into the forest. As she walked, she met a talking rabbit, a mischievous fox, a wise owl, and a friendly deer. With each new friend, Lily's confidence grew, and together they reached the witch's lair. The witch was waiting for them, and with a flick of her wand, she sent her minions to attack. But Lily and her newfound friends were ready. They fought bravely and defeated the minions one by one until there were none left. With the minions defeated, the witch came out of her lair and challenged Lily to a duel. But Lily's friends came to her aid, and with their help, she managed to defeat the witch. As the witch fell, she disappeared in a puff of smoke, and the garden was restored to its former glory. The king and queen were overjoyed and honored Lily for her bravery and kindness. From that day on, the garden was protected, and Lily became the magical garden adventure. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a young girl named Lily who loved nothing more than playing outside in her garden. She would spend hours tending to the flowers and herbs that grew there, but one day, she stumbled upon a hidden path she had never seen before. Curious as ever, she decided to follow the path, which led her deep into the forest. As she walked further and further, she came across a clearing where she saw a beautiful garden, unlike any she had ever seen before. The flowers glittered with the morning dew, and the leaves of the trees rustled in the gentle breeze. But something else was also different about this garden. the flowers and plants were all enchanted. Lily was amazed by what she saw, and she couldn't help but explore every inch of the garden. She saw that the enchantment allowed the plants to talk, and she soon made friends with them. The flowers whispered secrets to her, and the trees swayed gently to comfort her. One day, while she was walking through the garden, she received a message from the Queen of the Enchanted Realm, who ruled over the magical garden. The Queen asked her to help save the garden from a curse that had befallen it. An evil sorcerer had placed a spell on the garden, and it was slowly dying. Lily accepted the challenge and set out to find the sorcerer. She journeyed through forests, crossed dangerous rivers, and climbed steep mountains until she finally found him. With a brave heart and a determined spirit, she faced off against the wicked sorcerer and broke his curse. The magical garden was saved, and Lily was hailed as its hero. The Queen of the Enchanted Realm bestowed upon Lily a special gift, a wand that could summon magic wherever she went. She could now bring the magic of the garden with her wherever she went. From that day on, Lily used her magic wand to bring joy and happiness everywhere she went. And though she had saved the garden, it was the garden that had saved her by teaching her how a little bit of magic can go a long way in making the world a better place. And they all lived happily ever after. The beautiful enchanted forest. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there was a beautiful enchanted forest. This forest was home to magical creatures like fairies, unicorns, and talking trees. The people of the kingdom were always curious about the forest but never dared to enter it as they feared the magic that was within. One day, a little girl named Lily wandered into the enchanted forest while looking for her lost kitten, Snowball. As she walked deeper into the forest, she came across a group of friendly fairies who were having a tea party. They gave her some delicious fairy cakes and helped her search for her kitten. As they searched, they found themselves in front of a big castle that belonged to the evil witch. The witch had cast a spell on the entire forest, making all its creatures sick. Even the trees were losing their magic. Feeling brave, Lily and the fairies decided to sneak into the castle to break the spell. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by the wicked witch herself. But Lily wasn't afraid. She bravely told the witch she wanted to help her creatures and pleaded with her to remove the spell. At first, the witch laughed at her and said that the spell could never be broken. But as Lily continued to plead, the witch began to see the goodness in her heart. Moved by her bravery and kind spirit, the witch finally agreed to break the spell. All the magical creatures of the forest were cured, and the forest was restored to its former glory. The trees were once again tall and majestic, the fairies danced around happily, and the unicorns pranced around in the sunshine. From that day on, the people of the kingdom were no longer scared of the enchanted forest. They would often visit to see the magic that had been restored, and Lily became known as the hero who saved the forest. And so, the enchanted forest remained a place of wonder and magic, home to all kinds of wonderful creatures that could only be found in fairy tales. The end. The Enchanted Forest Adventure. Once upon a time in a far-off kingdom, there lived a little girl named Lily. She loved nothing more than to explore the vast and wild forests that surrounded her home. One day, she ventured further than ever before and stumbled upon an enchanted forest. The forest was like no other, the trees were tall and ancient, and their branches were adorned with sparkling jewels that glimmered in the sunlight. As Lily explored deeper into the forest, she came across a clearing where she saw a group of animals gathered around a small pond. The animals were all talking amongst themselves, and as soon as they saw Lily, they all went silent and stared at her. As she approached them, they introduced themselves as the guardians of the forest and explained how they had been watching over it for many years. Lily was fascinated by their stories and asked if she could join them on their adventures. The animals agreed, and so began Lily's journey through the enchanted forest. Together, they discovered hidden waterfalls, secret caves, and even found a magical tree that spoke to them in a language only they could understand. The tree told them about an evil sorcerer who had cursed the forest many years ago, causing it to become enchanted. The only way to break the curse was to find a rare flower that only grew on the opposite side of the forest. Lily and her newfound animal friends knew that they had to find this flower and so set out on their greatest adventure yet. They crossed rushing rivers, climbed steep mountains, and faced many dangers along the way. Finally, after many long days, they found the rare flower and brought it back to the magical tree. The tree used the flower's magic to break the curse, and the forest returned to its normal state. The animals thanked Lily for her help and named her the honorary guardian of the forest. From that day on, Lily and her animal friends would often venture into the enchanted forest, but this time it was a place of beauty and wonder rather than danger. And so, Lily learned that by being brave and kind, she could make a difference in the world around her, no matter how big or small. The Magic Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily who lived in a small village. She was always fascinated by the stories her grandmother would tell her about magical creatures and enchanted lands. One day, she decided to explore the nearby forest, hoping to discover some magic of her own. As she ventured deeper into the woods, she stumbled upon a hidden door that led to a secret path. Despite her fear, she followed the winding trail until she came across a beautiful clearing filled with shimmering flowers, fluttering butterflies, and singing birds. In the center of the clearing stood a grand oak tree, and as Lily approached it, she noticed a tiny door at its base. Without hesitation, she opened the door and stepped inside. To her amazement, she found herself in a magical world filled with wonders beyond her wildest dreams. A friendly fairy named Tilly greeted her and showed her around the mystical land. They played with unicorns, danced with fairies, and even had a tea party with a wise old owl. As they journeyed deeper into the enchanted realm, they encountered a mischievous goblin who challenged them to a race. Lily and Tilly accepted the challenge and raced through the forest, overcoming obstacles and dodging traps. In the end, they emerged victorious, and the goblin graciously admitted defeat. He revealed that he had been testing their courage and rewarded them with a special gift, a magic crystal that would grant them one wish. Lily wished for all the animals in the forest to be protected and happy, while Tilly wished for the forest to remain a haven of peace and beauty forevermore. Their wishes were granted, and the forest remains a magical, wondrous place to this day. From that day on, Lily visited the magic forest often, sharing her adventures with the villagers and spreading joy wherever she went. And though she grew up and moved away, she never forgot the enchanted realm that had captured her heart. The end. The Enchanted Garden. In a far-off land, there lived a kind-hearted old man named Benjamin. He loved plants and flowers and spent most of his time in his lush garden, tending to the beautiful blooms and singing songs to them. One day, as he was watering his garden, he saw a tiny fairy land on a flower. She was no bigger than his thumb and had delicate wings that shimmered in the sunlight. "Hello, little fairy," said Benjamin. "What brings you here?" "I am Luminia, the fairy of light," replied the fairy. "I have been sent by the fairy queen to ask for your help. A wicked sorceress has cast a spell on our forest and all the flowers and trees are withering away. We need someone who can break the spell and restore life to our home." Benjamin was kind-hearted and couldn't say no to someone in need. "I will help you, Luminia," he said. "Lead me to the forest." As they journeyed through the forest, they saw the effects of the sorceress's spell. The trees were bare and the flowers were drooping. Birds and animals lay asleep, unable to wake up from the curse. They finally reached the sorceress's castle, which was surrounded by a moat of black water. Luminia guided Benjamin across the moat and into the castle, where they found the sorceress sitting on her throne. "What do you want?" sneered the sorceress. "I have come to break your curse and restore the forest," said Benjamin calmly. "You cannot break my curse," shouted the sorceress. "It is too powerful for a mere mortal like you." But Benjamin wasn't afraid. He took out a small pouch of seeds he'd brought with him and began to plant them around the castle. As he planted each seed, a small sprout would spring up and grow rapidly, wrapping itself around the castle walls. The sorceress watched in horror as the vines crept up to the roof of her castle, blocking out all sunlight. She tried to use her magic to stop them, but they were too strong. Finally, the vines bloomed into beautiful flowers, and their sweet fragrance filled the air. The sorceress's curse was broken, and life was restored to the forest. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the fairy queen gave Benjamin a magical seed that would grow into a tree. The Secret Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a young girl named Jade. She was kind and gentle, with long flowing hair that shimmered in the sun. Jade loved to explore the forest surrounding her home, and would often go on adventures by herself. One day, while playing in the woods, Jade stumbled upon a hidden garden. The garden was full of the most beautiful flowers and plants she had ever seen, and she couldn't help but feel enchanted by its charm. As she walked through the garden, she noticed a tiny door in the distance. Curious, she approached the door and opened it to reveal a magical world beyond. Inside the door was a fairy kingdom filled with talking animals and friendly fairies. The animals danced and sang, and the fairies giggled and played among the flowers. Jade was welcomed with open arms, and soon became a beloved member of the secret garden. As days passed, Jade would visit the garden every chance she could get, and she became fast friends with all the creatures who lived there. She learned how to speak to the animals and even helped the fairies with their magic spells. However, one day, an evil witch discovered the existence of the secret garden and threatened to destroy it. She planned to use the fairies' magic for her own selfish gain, and would stop at nothing to get it. Jade knew she had to act quickly to save her friends and the magical garden that had become her second home. She gathered all the animals and fairies and came up with a plan to defeat the witch. With Jade's bravery and the animals' help, they were able to outsmart the witch and save the secret garden. From that day on, Jade continued to visit the garden whenever she could, and became known as the protector of the magical realm. And so, the secret garden remained hidden and safe from harm, thanks to the courage and kindness of a young girl named Jade. The Magical Tree. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a magical tree that stood tall in the center of the forest. This tree was different from any other tree in the forest, as it had the power to grant wishes to those who truly needed them. One day, a young girl named Lily stumbled upon the tree while she was out picking berries in the forest. She had been feeling down, as her family was struggling to make ends meet, and she wished with all her heart that she could help her family. As she approached the tree, she whispered her wish to the leaves that rustled in the wind. To her surprise, the tree spoke back to Lily. "What is it that you desire, my child?" it asked. Lily was taken aback and didn't know what to say. After a moment of thought, she replied, "I wish for my family to always have enough food to eat and to never worry about being hungry again." The tree listened carefully to Lily's wish before it shook its branches, and a basket of delicious fruits and vegetables appeared at her feet. "Take this basket to your family and share it with them. From this day forward, they will never go hungry again," the tree said. Lily was overjoyed and thanked the tree before hurrying back home to share the food with her family. True to the tree's word, they never went hungry again. Word of the magical tree soon spread throughout the land, and people came from far and wide to receive its blessings. However, the tree was selective in the wishes it granted and only granted them to those who truly needed them. Years went by, and the tree continued to stand tall in the forest, spreading joy and granting wishes to those who needed them. Eventually, people stopped coming to the tree, and it was left alone once again. But despite this, the tree continued to grow and thrive, content in the knowledge that it had made a difference in the lives of those who sought its help. And so, the magical tree remained a symbol of hope and kindness for all who passed by it in the forest. The Magical Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily, who loved to go on adventures. One day, while playing in the woods, she came across a strange and magical forest. She was curious and decided to venture into the forest to see what secrets it held. As she walked deeper into the forest, she noticed that the trees were much taller and the flowers were more colorful than what she had ever seen before. She saw butterflies dancing around her and heard birds singing melodious songs. Suddenly, she came across a beautiful fairy sitting on a tree branch. The fairy introduced herself as Fairy Rosella, the protector of the magical forest. She showed Lily the wonders of the forest and introduced her to other magical creatures living there. There were unicorns, gnomes, elves, sprites, and many other creatures. They all welcomed her warmly and showed her their unique abilities. As they continued to explore, they stumbled upon an enormous tower in the center of the forest. Fairy Rosella told Lily that it was the home of the wicked witch, who had cursed the forest and its inhabitants. Lily knew that she had to help the creatures and break the curse. She bravely went to the tower, where she met the witch, who challenged her with various tasks. But with the help of her new friends, Lily was able to complete the tasks and break the curse. The witch was defeated, and the magical forest was saved. As a token of appreciation, Fairy Rosella gave Lily a magic crystal, which granted her 3 wishes. Lily wished for happiness, joy, and for the forest to always remain magical. From that day forward, Lily and the magical creatures of the forest were the best of friends, and Lily visited them often to go on adventures. And so, the magical forest remained a happy and wonderful place, where all creatures lived in harmony. And Lily lived happily ever after. The end. Princess Rose and the Enchanted Garden. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there was a beautiful princess named Rose. She lived in a grand castle with her parents, the king and queen, and her younger brother, Prince Leo. Princess Rose loved to explore the kingdom and she enjoyed spending time in the palace gardens. One day, while wandering around the gardens, Princess Rose stumbled upon a hidden path that led her to an enchanted garden. The garden was unlike any other she had seen before, with trees that sparkled in the sunlight and flowers that glowed in the moonlight. As Princess Rose wandered through the garden, she came across a little fairy who introduced herself as Tilly. Tilly told the princess that the garden had been enchanted by a powerful wizard many years ago, and that only those pure of heart could enter. Princess Rose was in awe of the enchanted garden and she promised to keep it a secret. She visited the garden every day and spent hours exploring its magical wonders. However, one day Princess Rose's jealous cousin, Duke Edward, discovered her secret. Duke Edward had always been envious of Princess Rose's beauty and popularity, and he saw this as an opportunity to ruin her reputation. Duke Edward concocted a plan to expose Princess Rose's secret to the entire kingdom. He invited all the nobles and aristocrats to a grand feast at the castle and announced that he had heard rumors of the princess sneaking out of the castle at night. The next day, Princess Rose was devastated when she found out that her secret had been exposed. She feared that the enchanted garden would be destroyed and that she would never be able to visit it again. But to her surprise, the people of the kingdom rallied behind her. They recognized how kind and compassionate Princess Rose was, and they refused to believe the lies that Duke Edward had spread. In the end, Duke Edward was banished from the kingdom for his treacherous ways, and Princess Rose's secret remained safe. She continued to visit the enchanted garden, where she learned important life lessons about courage, kindness, and the true meaning of friendship. And in the years that followed, Princess Rose ruled the kingdom with grace and wisdom, always remembering the lessons she had learned in the enchanted garden. The end. The Adventures of the Enchanted Forest. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was a forest so enchanting that it was said to be home to magical creatures. It was called the Enchanted Forest. Legend had it that whoever entered the forest never came out the same. One day, 2 brothers named Jack and Peter decided to explore the enchanted forest. They thought it would be fun to see if the legends were true. As they walked deeper into the forest, they saw all sorts of strange things. They saw trees that glowed in the dark and flowers that moved on their own. Suddenly, they came across a beautiful fairy named Aurora. She greeted them and told them that they were in the enchanted forest, where anything could happen. Aurora asked the brothers what they were looking for, and they told her that they were searching for adventure. Aurora smiled and told them that the enchanted forest was full of adventures. But they must be cautious, because not all the creatures in the forest were friendly. She gave them a map and told them to follow it until they reached a big tree with a door. She said that the door would open only if they solved a riddle. The brothers followed the map until they found the big tree with the door. They knocked on the door, and it opened. Inside, they found a magical room filled with treasure. There was gold, silver, and jewels scattered everywhere. But as they were about to take some treasure, they heard a voice that said, "Take only what you need, or you will suffer the consequences." Jack and Peter were frightened, but they knew that they should heed the warning. They took only what they needed and left the room. As they walked back through the forest, they saw that the trees and flowers were wilting. They realized that they had taken too much from the magical room. They retraced their steps and went back to the tree with the door. They knocked again and the door opened. They put back the treasure they had taken and walked out. As they left the forest, everything started to come back to life again. From that day on, Jack and Peter told everyone they met about their adventures in the enchanted forest. They warned people to be careful when they went into the forest and not to take more than what they needed. And so, the legend of the enchanted forest lived on. Parents told their children. The Enchanted Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there existed a magical garden. This garden was unlike any other, as it was home to various creatures and plants that could only be found within its boundaries. The garden was ruled by a kind fairy named Luna. Luna was responsible for taking care of the garden and all the creatures that resided within it. She took great pride in her work, and the garden flourished under her guidance. One day, a young boy named Max stumbled upon the garden while running away from bullies who had been harassing him. The moment Max entered the garden, he knew it was unlike anything he had ever seen. The colors were more vivid, the air was sweeter, and the sun shone brighter. Luna noticed Max and quickly flew over to him to see if he needed any help. Max was nervous at first, but quickly warmed up to Luna's kindness and hospitality. Luna showed Max around the garden, introducing him to all the different plants and animals that called it home. Max soon realized that this was a place where he truly belonged. Over the next few weeks, Max would visit the garden every day, spending hours playing with the creatures and exploring every nook and cranny. He became good friends with Luna, who taught him about the magic of the garden and how it could help him grow into a better person. However, one day, Max's visits to the garden were cut short when he fell ill. His parents took him to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with a rare disease that had no known cure. Max's condition worsened with each passing day, and he felt like he was losing all hope. One night, Max's mother noticed a glimmer of light outside his window. She peered out and saw Luna sitting on the windowsill. Watching over Max, Luna had come to Max's aid, and with her magic, she was able to heal him of his illness. From that day on, Max knew he had a special purpose in life. He continued to visit the enchanted garden, where he learned valuable lessons about kindness, empathy, and courage. Luna became his trusted friend and mentor, guiding him along the way. And so, Max grew up to be a kind and compassionate person, inspiring others around him to do the same. The enchanted garden remained a place of wonder and magic, welcoming all those who came in search of their true selves. The Enchanted Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a young girl named Lily. She lived in a small village with her family and had always been curious about the mysterious forest that surrounded it. One day, as she was wandering around the village, she overheard a group of travelers talking about a magical world hidden deep in the forest. Intrigued by their words, Lily decided to embark on an adventure to discover this secret place. As she ventured deeper into the forest, she encountered all sorts of creatures, from playful fairies to mischievous goblins. Despite the dangers, she remained determined to find the magical world the travelers had spoken of. After days of wandering and overcoming obstacles, she finally stumbled upon a hidden valley. In the center of this valley stood a magnificent tree unlike any she had seen before. Its branches reached out to the sky, and its roots dug deep into the earth below. Lily approached the tree, and as she touched its bark, she was suddenly transported to a world beyond her wildest dreams. A world filled with unicorns roaming freely, mermaids swimming in crystal-clear lakes, and dragons soaring in the skies. In this enchanted world, Lily made friends with all the creatures she met and went on many adventures with them. She explored secret caves filled with glittering jewels, rode on the backs of giant eagles, and even fought alongside brave knights to defeat an evil sorcerer threatening the land. Eventually, it was time for Lily to return home. As she bid farewell to her new friends, she knew that she would never forget her incredible adventure in the enchanted world. She returned to her village a changed person, with a newfound appreciation for the mysteries and magic of the world around her. From then on, every time she looked at the forest, she couldn't help but smile, knowing that behind its seemingly ordinary exterior, an extraordinary world awaited those brave enough to search for it. The Magic Garden. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a magical garden. It was unlike any other garden in the world, as it was filled with the most unique and beautiful flowers and trees. The garden was home to many creatures, including friendly animals like rabbits, squirrels, and birds. The garden was protected by a fairy named Aurora, who watched over it day and night. She had the power to make the flowers bloom and the trees grow tall, and she was loved by all the creatures in the garden. One day, a little girl named Lily stumbled upon the garden while exploring the forest. She was awestruck by its beauty and was amazed by all the creatures living peacefully inside. Aurora appeared before her and greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Magic Garden, Lily," said Aurora. "I am Aurora, the protector of this wonderful place. What brings you here?" Lily explained that she was lost in the forest and had been searching for a way back home. Aurora guided her through the garden and showed her all the wonders it held. Lily was fascinated by the different kinds of flowers and plants, and she couldn't believe how kind and gentle the animals were. As they walked through the garden, Aurora explained that the magic garden had the power to grant wishes. Lily couldn't believe what she was hearing and asked if it was true. Aurora nodded and said that if she made a wish with all her heart, it would come true. Lily thought for a moment and knew exactly what she wanted to wish for. She wished for all the animals in the garden to be happy and healthy, and for the garden to continue to thrive. Aurora smiled at her wish and granted it immediately. From that day on, every time Lily visited the magic garden, she was greeted with even more beauty and wonder. The animals were always happy and playful, and the flowers bloomed brighter than ever before. Lily knew that the magic garden was truly a special place, and she felt lucky to have discovered it. And so, years went by, and Lily grew up to be a kind and loving person, always taking care of the creatures in the forest. She never forgot about her wish and never stopped visiting the magic garden. And to this day, the garden remains a place of wonder and magic, a place where dreams come true. The Magical Forest Adventure. Once upon a time, there was a magical forest far from any city or town. In this forest lived creatures that were never seen before by humans. These creatures were kind, caring, and playful, and they loved the visitors who came to their land. One day, a little girl named Lily stumbled upon the enchanted forest while taking a walk. She was amazed by the beauty of the place and decided to take a closer look. Suddenly, a little fairy appeared in front of her and greeted her with a smile. "Welcome, Lily. We've been waiting for you," said the fairy. Lily was surprised to hear the fairy talking to her. However, she wasn't afraid. The fairy took Lily's hand and showed her around the magical forest. They met a group of talking animals, who welcomed Lily with open arms. They played games, danced, and sang songs. Lily had never experienced so much joy and happiness before. As the sun began to set, the fairy led Lily to a grand treehouse. It was made of leaves, branches, and flowers. Inside, there was a feast waiting for them. The food was magical, just like everything else in the enchanted forest. While feasting, the fairy told Lily about the wicked evil queen who had taken over the neighboring kingdom. She had stolen the king's crown and only a pure-hearted child could retrieve it. Lily knew she had to help. The next day, the fairy gave Lily a magical map that would lead her to the queen's castle. The journey was long and treacherous, but with the animal's guidance, she finally reached the castle. The queen saw Lily coming and ordered her guards to catch her. But the animals came to Lily's rescue, fought off the guards, and retrieved the king's crown. Lily returned the crown to the king, and he was overjoyed. In return, he declared that the magical forest would be protected forever and opened his kingdom's gates to the enchanted creatures. Lily was now a hero in the magical forest, and everyone celebrated her bravery and kindness. From that day on, Lily came to visit the enchanted forest every year, and the creatures welcomed her with open arms. And so, life in the enchanted forest continued to be filled with joy and happiness, thanks to the kindness of a little girl named Lily.